Hello and welcome to Micro Live. Did you know that your house is already wired for a computerised alarm system and all you have to do is plug in a few of these?
And did you know that we know exactly how many of you are watching us out there? We look at how the size and composition of the television audience is measured.
And from Scotland, a computer terminal which, unlike ordinary bank statements, tells you how much money is really in your bank account.
Thursday evening in the middle of winter. The chances are that in most of these houses there's a television on. And right now, the chances are they're tuned to BBC One. In the 1970s, BBC market researchers had to wait until the next day to find out their audience figures.
Excuse me, Molly, I'm from the BBC. I wondered if I could ask you a couple of questions about your last night's viewing. Did you watch any television last night?
A street interview carefully conducted can be a perfectly valid way of gathering information, but there was always the suspicion people were trying too hard to be helpful.
Yes, that's right.
And as a result, audience figures were perhaps over-optimistic.
Early afternoon.
So, the BBC and ITV companies got together to produce a more reliable system which gathered information as the viewers actually watched. The viewers were a statistical sample chosen to match the overall pattern of households in the UK. But the new method asked a lot of these viewers, who had to fill in diaries every quarter of an hour, noting the number of people in the room and the programme being watched. Hello and welcome to Micro Live. Tonight we'll be giving you some of the reactions to last week's story on electronic snooping. If people were not committed enough, this method could underestimate the number of viewers. And some houses had 2 or 3 televisions and a video recorder, which meant more diaries, more data, and more chance of errors. So the data collection has gone electronic, and the key to the system is this, or rather the fact that the television plugs into the mains. All the sockets in the house are connected via the house wiring. The electricity travelling round the circuit is an alternating current. It varies 50 times every second. Even if this waveform is slightly distorted, all the electrical appliances will still work perfectly normally.
Against disease.
What the new audience research system does is deliberately distort the mains waveform at one point, the television, in a way that can be recognised and read at another, this data recorder. It can read information from up to 4 televisions or video recorders, each of which sends information on specific parts of the signal. So, whichever television you use and wherever you plug it in, as long as it has one of these coding boxes on the back, it can pass on information to this data collector. And the data collector is also a modem. So at about 1 o'clock in the morning, the large computer back at base makes 3,000 telephone calls. That's 1 to each of these units to pick up all the viewing information. And the information is of 2 kinds. The time of day and the channel selected, that's logged automatically whenever the television is on. But the people watching information has to be provided by the people watching. They use this gadget. When the television is first switched on, this display flashes to remind you to key in details of the people in the room. Dan, what do those buttons stand for?
Well, although technically not the head of the household, I'm classed as number 1, my husband number 2, and Roger number 3. The children, although obviously they watch television, are not allocated a number.
Why is that?
Because they're under 4.
Roger, you're number 3. What information does the computer have about you?
Well, it would have that I'm male, my age, 17, and that I'm still at school in full-time education.
Right. Is it easy to use?
Yes, very simple, just as you would use a remote control unit for turning the television on or off.
Do you have to do that every time you leave the room, or whenever you come in?
Whenever you leave the room, you have to push your allocated number again, which takes it off the display unit. So that shows that you're not actually in the room watching television. And then if you come back into the room, you push your button again, which puts you back on.
We weren't allowed to film a real survey family since that might affect the figures. Data from this family is not part of the final analysis.
No, it's not. It's actually edited out for this household, principally because I'm a member of AGB. I'm the production manager in charge of the television audience side of the company. And I have the equipment in my household, 1, out of interest, 2, because I would like to experience life as a typical member of our viewing panel. And 3, because I do a lot of experiments with the equipment simply to test the system. And I put in all sorts of unusual viewing circumstances and check it the following day at the office to see whether the equipment has properly recorded some of the strange things I've done at home.
AGB's headquarters are in West London, and every night the dedicated mini-computer phones out to the survey houses on 20 lines. The whole process, with redials if lines are busy, can take up to 3 hours. The following morning, a limited analysis is available to those advertisers who are prepared to pay for it, and AGB are expanding the system.
One example I can give you is something that we'll be starting later this year, setting up a panel of homes with video recorders where when they use the video to record an off-air program, we will be putting a signal, we call it a fingerprint, onto the videotape. When they play that tape back, we will read the signal off, and that will tell us, when they're playing video, exactly what they're watching, when it was recorded, what channel it was recorded on, and so on. So we can look at so-called video time shifting to see how often people watch programs that they've recorded, how long is the delay, are they skipping forward through commercial breaks, and all the sorts of things that the advertising industry wants to know.
There's no doubt that the new system produces more reliable information, but the way the various companies interpret those figures will probably remain as dubious as ever.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics. I wonder what Disraeli, who first coined that phrase, would have made of the announcement that more than half the nation watched EastEnders on Christmas Day. Now, using the mains to send information is becoming a standard practice. Baby alarms like this have been sending the sound of crying children around the wiring for several years. You simply plug in the microphone into the baby's room and then the loudspeaker into any other room, and you can listen to what the baby's doing. And now you can use the mains wiring to carry all sorts of other information around the house as well.
When home computers were first launched, part of the sales blurb was that they could be used for controlling things in the home, like turning on an electric blanket when it became too cold, or closing the curtains when it gets dark. The reality was that nobody used them for this. You needed a lot of extra electronics and relays and so on before you could even turn on a kettle with your computer. You also need an awful lot of specially installed wiring to carry control commands around the house. As a result, do-it-yourself home control systems are often messy, unreliable, and potentially quite dangerous. But now, that's all changed with these red boxes. They transmit signals down the mains wiring like the baby alarm, so no special cabling is necessary. So how do they work? Well, what we have here is a control box called a red leader. It has a computer processor with some memory, and to make it work, you have to connect it to your home computer. Effectively, you're using your micro as a terminal to the control computer. The red leader can monitor signals from other red boxes and send messages to them as well. The great thing is that the only connection you need between the boxes is the mains wiring. Of course, one of the problems with sending messages around your mains wiring is that the messages, like the wiring, don't stop at your front door. They'll pass out under the street and probably still be readable on the mains electricity in houses 2 or 3 doors down the road. To stop you turning on your neighbour's remote-controlled B-Day by mistake, the red boxes each have a unique identifier. It's rather like a telephone number, except you won't quite find a telephone number as long as this one, and they'll only respond to messages which start with their own number. Well, all this is very clever, but what can you use it for? Probably the best application for these boxes would be as a simple, cheap home security system. You plug in an alarm like this one into this red box, which is a switchable mains socket. And then we're going to set this red box to detect the movement of warm bodies, and I'm going to use it to protect that picture over there. I clip it on this thing and point it towards the picture like this, and then plug it into the nearest mains socket, like that. Then I've got to write a line of software for this computer which says, if sensor sees burglar, then switch on alarm, and you've got a burglar alarm. Well, let's see if I can make it work. The software that comes with the system uses menus, so it's fairly easy to set up. What we've done is to tell the control box about the alarm. This column tells us that it's off at the moment, which it is, and we could use the timer to operate the alarm, but we want it to be operated by the sensor. So we need to tell the control box about the sensor. Well, I've already entered most of the sensor number, this gigantic number in here. I want to complete that, and it'll start to produce the sensor. We're using a BBC Micro, so the software also works on the Commodore and the Spectrum. Well, now the control box knows about the alarm and the sensor. What we have to do is to tell the control box to switch on the alarm when it receives a signal from the sensor. First of all, I've got to set it up, so I set the whole system to off. And then I'm going to move the cursor onto the alarm. I want to access an auxiliary device, which in this case is the sensor, number 2, and the whole thing should be primed. Leslie, let's see if you can steal my picture.
OK, here I go. In for the steal. No chance, it works.
Terrific. Well, it actually works. As the system is controlled by a computer program, we can install other sensors operating at different times and tailor the system exactly to the needs of my house. And if you're a real techie, you can get access to the control language called Red Basic and make the system work in any way you want. After you set the system up, you can disconnect your Micro and leave the red boxes to run independently. But to reset them, you'd need to reconnect your Micro again. Well, it's also possible to use the mains for sending data between 2 microcomputers without any extra wiring. The output from this Micro is connected to the mains by this red box. There's the output from the Micro, and there's the mains lead. And over there, Leslie's Micro is also plugged in, and I can send her this message. Just for a bit of fun, we can plug in this baby alarm into the mains and listen to the data being transmitted to Leslie's Micro. Well, there's Leslie's screen, and here comes the message.
Yeah. I heard it, I read it, a dozen red boxes today. Thanks, Mac. Romance.
Thank you, Leslie. Well, of course, its use is limited. Each Micro needs the appropriate software. Only one person can send information at once, and it's fairly slow.
Not only that, as Mac just demonstrated, supposing the people next door had a baby alarm, like the one he showed, well, they'd think their baby was bleeping. And if they used red boxes as well as you, then both their system's response time and yours would be slowed down. So any serious user would have to use one of these. It's a mains filter, and that could turn out to be rather costly. So, although Red Leader looks as approachable as a set of Karman rollers, be warned, you do need some techie know-how to cope with it. But at least it's a start towards using your Micro to run things for you at home.